All right, can you guys hear me okay? Cool. Well, thank you guys for thank you, Saints, for putting this together and having me here. I want to talk about a little bit about bug bounties and some cool stuff that I found through bug bounties. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But before that, quickly about me, I've been hacking since I was a teenager, but I discovered bug bounties in 2013, and it was probably one of the best things that's happened to me. I'm a poster child of bug bounty hunting, and I've made a career out of it. I used to be the former head of hacker education at HackerOne, and then I became a exec for a startup later that got me into doing more research. But now I'm one of the co-founders of Hacking Hub. We teach people how to hack. Everything that I talk about here are on our websites for free. You can just go and play around, and if you want to reproduce these on your own, you have access to them for free. I'm also a content creator, speaker, and trainer, and I've hacked into a bunch of companies like Amazon, Zoom, Airbnb, Apple, you name it. And I've recently joined the $1 Million Club at HackerOne, so I'm one of the $1 Million hackers now in HackerOne. Also, there was a co-speaker on this. We originally did a version of this at DEF CON this year. There are some different slides on this one, but I want to quickly also give a shout out to Corbin. He couldn't make it here. I have one of his findings on here because it's way too good to not keep it on here. But he's been doing bug bounties since 2016. Now he has a mattress company. It's real. It's not a front to wash money. I asked him a bunch of times. It's real. So if you want to buy a mattress, what is it called? The boarding mattress, go check him out. He's selling mattresses right now. And again, you can learn all these hubs. They're free. If it catches your eye and you want to try it out, give them a try. About this talk, so as I mentioned, I do a lot of bug bounties, and before I left my corporate job, I had the responsibility of doing research and finding cool things, hacking, different stacks and technology, making research out of it. Well, leaving that job, I don't have that purpose to do that anymore. I'm just a hacker now, and I can hack whatever I want. So this talk specifically isn't about a technology stack or some cool product or enterprise product that I've hacked into. It's just a series of dumb vulnerabilities that just got escalated for no reason. And we hacked into a lot of different industries, from a prison to a car manufacturer to a couple of good ones I'm going to mention. So there is no companies mentioned. You're welcome to draw whatever conclusion you want out of the names of who you think that is. I cannot tell you who they are. I cannot, say yes or no. Some of them are pretty obvious. Some of them are not obvious. But again, your assumptions are up to you. I take no responsibilities for it. And I have to set up for legal purposes. So this is a manufacturer, our best one, our first one. A very interesting series of unfortunate events. This is actually one of Corbin's finds. I think it's the only one that we're going to speak about. So a lot of times, a lot of bug bounty hunters love the process of doing things through recon. I know Haddix is here. He's going to do a talk on doing recon. I won't get into too much of that, but a lot of us love to scan the entire IPv4 space. We just scan it. We parse all the SSL certs data, and we pull from it. Well, Corbin came across this domain, this IP address that says, hey, backend IP not found, the IP being the IP of the box, but there is an SSL cert attached to it that's a wildcard. You don't know what the actual subdomain or DNS entry is, but there's a DNS entry attached to it under the apps zone. Well, after doing some brute forcing through tools, he comes across his configurator prod. There's a found host. The response for it is no longer backend IP not found. It's actually responding with something different, indicating that, hey, there is some different behavior here. Well, doing a little bit of fuzzing and using tools like your FFuzz or WFuzz, ForexBuster, whatever you want to use, our choice is FFuzz a lot of times. He finds out a Spring actuator is that it's misconfigured. If you're not familiar with what Spring Boot allows you to do, it allows you to run Java apps on your box and on a web app, but then it also has these endpoints like the env and heap dump. Environment variables are in there in the first one, and the heap dump is just a snapshot of your memory, and you can fish for credentials. This is very important because it's going to come up, I think, twice in this talk. I just want to make sure I get that out of the way so we know those are the two that we're going to talk about. And sometimes you have access to both. Sometimes you have access to one, not the other. In this case, access to both. You open up env, it gives you the OAuth tokens. It gives you, hey, here is my client, and here's a secret, and also here's a server where it belongs. So what you do is you can make a curl request to that host. You pass your client secret, and your client tokens, and it comes back and gives you an access token. It says, here's an access token you can use on that config site that we gave you. And when you make that request, you repeat the process, you do more content discovery on that host, you come up with another actuator and it has the same issue. But this time, the passwords and the tokens are censored or redacted, right? So in the previous one that we looked at, you can actually see, it says, here's a client secret, here's a token for it. You don't have to fish for it. But in this case, it's giving you the username and the passwords are all asterisks. You can't see it. And this is where the heap dump is very helpful, because all you have to do is curl and download the heap dump, and you can just grep through the entire file using strings. You go curl, cat, strings, and then you grep for the password. In this case, we know the password is called source password, and the username is GOps. And once you look for it, it gives you the password to GOps. Well, it turns out GOps stands for GitHub Operations, and that password allows you to log into the enterprise GitHub. And all you have to do is give it a -u if you haven't used the API for it. You give it the username and password, and it gives you access to the entire repository. This is a car manufacturer that a lot of Americans use. Based on what I saw from the repos that Corbin had, he could have changed the car's systems, he could have updated code for the websites, all the smart devices, anything that this manufacturer had access to, you could modify throughout this GitHub process, or this repository that he had access to. So unfortunately for them, just leaked access to a lot of different tokens. And also you just have everything in the source code of everything. You can modify it and push code and do whatever you want to do with it. So that was one of the cool ones. I want to get that out of the way, because that the heap dump thing comes back and bites us in the back again in just a bit. The next one I want to talk about is a prison break. And also the beauty of doing bug bounties is that I get to hack all these like random industries that I would never be able to. A prison is like top notch, because who's gonna let me go into and hack into a prison? This one isn't necessarily like, we're not taking over Gotham City. We're just, we can see communications. They use this to allow people that are in the prison system, they can communicate with others, they can make appointments, they can make requests with the people that are working in the prison or the jail system. And it has a lot of also private data from the inmates are already public record, but their family and friends aren't. And their credit card information isn't, and the conversations they have isn't, photos and stuff like that. So this was a bug bounty program that gave us access to, actually I talked that already, but here, okay. They gave us access to this application. I have no clue what this application did. I was way late to this party. I was like a year and a half late to this bug bounty program. It was just flooded with payloads. The page was completely broken, and the user they gave us had access to nothing practically. Well, looking at the JavaScript and going through it indicated that there are some functionalities and there are some shortcuts. So for example, if you clicked Command I, it took you to another website where it showed you all the activity. For example, you did Command U, another subdomain, and it gave you like a list of users. Unfortunately for us, every time I was doing these shortcuts, I would have to put in a new set of credentials, and the ones that were given to us didn't work. So we only had access to this current application. Anything else that we wanted to log into would either send us to a login page or send us back to the current application. So this is the list of how kind of it worked. There is the control U that goes to admin and shows you the users. There's control D that goes to docs, and then you go to control N. It's a news site under the docs system. Well, turns out there's also authentication built into this system. So if you actually had access to the menu where you could click to go to docs, it doesn't just go to docs website. It hits an API call, and then it sends you to the docs website, and it gives you this auth URL. It says, hey, if you hit this URL, we're going to attach a token to your request, and we're going to log into your docs website. Cool. I get access to the docs. Perfect. I mean, it's useless. I don't want to read the internal documentation. That's some sort of an access that I wasn't supposed to have. But what becomes interesting is I could pass this token into the admin side. Same token that authorized me to the docs site. You just reuse it, and you put it into the parameter for auth token. You send it to all these different routes. It keeps pushing you back to the original site, but somehow when you pass to the admin settings, it brought up the admin settings page. So I'm no longer getting redirected, and it's giving me an active session. So it turns out if you know the exact path that you want to reach to, it actually says, hey, you have an auth token that works on all of our sites. We'll give you admin privileges. Not sure why they thought this was a smart idea, but it gives us access to it. Well, within that side, you also could reset people's passwords, but the problem here is that it takes a user ID and it takes a password, right? And in order to log into this website, you need to know the username or the email address associated with it to log in. So I can, hypothetically go user ID 1, which probably has some like internal user ID 2, 3, whatever, and give it a password or reset the password. It gives you a clear text password. Well, that's cool. It comes back and it says success. I put user ID 1, I put password HackerMan, success. But I don't know how to log into user ID 1. I have no information about this. So I take it to Twitter and I ask people like, hey, I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. I have no idea what's happening with this site. I think it was a little bit also too early in the process to ask this, but I have a clear text password. I know the user ID. I just don't know what the username is. There was a lot of suggestions like, hey, pass a username parameter. Maybe you can change the username, add an email parameter. Don't give it a user ID. Lots of like random things. None of them worked, unfortunately. But there is an important and interesting endpoint. You can also impersonate users during this application. So impersonation works similar to changing passwords. You just send a post request and you give it a user ID. It gives you a session. You log in as that user. Well, the one thing that really helps with this user ID is that every time you log in, you have a read-only account. I can't change anything on there, but I can read the settings page. So I can go right-click, top corner, click settings, log in as user ID 1, see what the email address is, and log in. So our first chain is you log into the admin, you change password, you impersonate whatever user admin you want to take over. You go to setting, you grab their email and password, you escalate your access, you log in, right? So that's our chain number 1. And this is what it looks like on CVSS. We like this, we just don't love it yet, because if you look on the left side, privilege required is high. This company had given me credentials that got me the foothold of being in the infrastructure. We like this, but we don't want to do that. We want to go to this. We want to go from a 9-1 to a 10 by bringing the privilege required all the way to none. Well, when all fails, the last resorts are always CSRF and cross-site scripting. With CSRF, you can perform an action where the user doesn't know what they're clicking on. They click a button or they visit a page, it does some action on the site. Cross-site scripting, you can also execute JavaScript. Similar to CSRF, you can just make him do whatever you want him to within that browser on the context of that website. Well, it turns out when a new user signs up, you can put a cross-site scripting payload in there. You can't put a payload in there, not in the name, not in your address field. None of your account details allow you to put a special character, except for the email. So in the email address field, you can actually put brackets, like a script tag. It goes Ben plus script tag at gmail.com. And for some reason, that was the only field that they allow you to put special characters in. And every time the users and the admins will log in and will hit user, it shows you a list of all the users, and their email address is also printed on that page. So what it allows us to do is we sign up and we put our email as that, Ben plus XSS at site.com, whatever the payload is. Our chain now becomes, we sign up, we wait for someone to go to the list of users, cross-site scripting payload is triggered, we have a session. We don't care what the user session is because we know how to elevate our access. We get our access to this account, then we impersonate somebody. We go to this one, then we impersonate somebody, we reset the password for him, and we can just take over the whole prison system. And this is kind of what it would look like. We go from being privilege required to none. The entire concept of it here is, what do we do to maximize vulnerabilities? With bug bounties, unfortunately, you're getting paid for impact. You're not getting paid for the theoretical things that you can do. In theory, I could do a lot of things on this website, right? But in theory, they could also say, nope, we gave you access to this thing. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And it turns out if you do a cross-site scripting, it changes things. With that one specifically, when you have admin access, there's a lot of system that it opens up. So at this point, you can assign people devices, you can read everyone's communications, people's release dates, their everything, their documents, their files, and everything. This was probably one of my most fun engagements that I've done because it's a prison system, and like you're borderline asking yourself, is what I'm doing here today illegal? Am I going to get in trouble for it? And that thought like stayed with me for a couple of weeks until they paid the bounties, and I could just be like done with it. And it's a very scary thing when there's the federal systems are involved. So again, thanks to bug bounties for making that happen. The third case study was hacking a large credit reporting agency. Rest in peace to them that have caused a lot of breaches in the past. I've been a target of it, but we'll call this one a multinational agency. thousands of domains. Each domain has their own subdomains. Thousands of application. They're in like every country pretty much, South America to Europe, any country you can think of. They have domains for it. Well, the best thing to do with a wide target like this is you're gonna do whois data. You want to see every domain they own. So you just go look at their whois data and you see what email address has been registered to, who is the name of the person that registered it, what the company name is. All that stuff allows you to create a list of their domains. So everything they own, every subsidiary, every acquisition, everything like that. So you list all the domains. This is also the expectation of the recon process. A lot of people just do this and rinse and repeat. Excuse me. And then you send it to subfinder or sublister. You spray for endpoints. You can do this with something like Nuclei. You can do it with Meg by Tom Nom Nom. There's a lot of good tools that are open sourced for this purpose. Well, none of this worked. This is like, I want to say about 80,000 assets. I'm just spraying endpoints. It's not going anywhere at all. But there are a couple of things that keep coming back. There is a Swagger UI you have access to. If you're not familiar with Swagger UI, it gives you the entire specs for the API. So whatever the endpoints are, how do you authenticate to it, what each endpoint requires as far as their the parameters, the data that you have to send, all that good stuff, right? And there's Actuator, when I call it minimal, it's you can't see the environment variables, you can't see heap dump. It just tells you, hey, I have an actuator here, but you can't see none of that stuff that's on there. And then there's a lot of leads, but still no vulnerabilities here. Well, where to now? I've been going through this phase of like, I did a lot of recon talks. I did a lot of recon. I love people that are big on doing automation and recon, but I've done that for like 5-6 years, and I'm completely done with it. I'm burnt out. I don't enjoy doing it. It's the entire space for it has changed. A lot of people doing really cool research, not for me. So the advice that I give a lot of people through, when I mentor, I make YouTube videos on our courses is always go and check the main application. The main application is the place that is always being developed and adding more features to it and things like that. Well, this side, we'll say random. The random is the country TLD. I just wanted to be safe and not get in trouble with this company. We just say, let's say it's like .fr, .eu, whatever that is, right? When you make a curl request to it, or you go to their website, it redirects you to an application, and it's the application name or the company name. And then there's the app, there's something redacted, and the random is the country that this application is hosted on, or the site that the country belongs to. And you can see it always has the random at the bottom, and the patterns are very weird. You can't just brute force for this. It's not like you have a word list that has this pattern, right? You can probably find this, but it's going to probably take you days to come up with this entire pattern. Well, at this point, there's a login page. Not a lot of discovered content. There's no APIs that I can access. There's no like API v1. It seems like everything is named very weirdly, and you have to be authenticated to be able to see what those what they look like. You look at JavaScript files, there's nothing in them. You look at Wayback Machine, there's nothing indexed. Look at Google, nothing indexed. Well, there is GitHub. There's always something on GitHub. There's always some developer, some third-party contractor that's left the company that's leaked some sort of information at some point. It turns out there are a ton of actual folders that are being reversed proxy to different servers, but they have all these applications, and it all starts with company name. There's the app or the app name, the API, and then whatever that application is being used for. And they leaked the 3 of these, and this is the pattern they have. And once you hit one of those, it just opens up everything else. But unfortunately, we need a login credential for it. And the bottom one is an interesting one because, as I mentioned, all these applications have Actuator available, but it's minimal, except the third one. So if you go to that third one, you hit Actuator, it gives you a heap dump. And within that heap dump, it gives you usernames, password, whatever you need. But this time, we don't have the environment variable where we can say, oh, this username is that I'm looking for, the value is source password. I don't have a lead. So you have to rely on things like just what I call dumpster diving. You're looking for generic passwords. You're looking for maybe things like JSON IDs, cookies. You look for authorization bearer. And it turns out if you actually look for authorization bearer for that in that heap dump, there is every single bank that uses this company's website. Every single one of their bearer tokens was leaked and just gave us access to everything that we needed to, which then you can look at people's credit reports, update their bank information. There's some other thing that you could have tested. Unfortunately, with bug bounties, that's a stopping point for me where I can't really poke things and just gotta report it. So red teamers, I feel like would enjoy doing more of this. I wish I could dive deeper in this. But yeah, there's going to be times when you find actuators. More of the story for this one is you're going to find actuators that you're going to either have to keep looking for an application that actually leaks data. And if you do get that data, you have to just dumpster dive. This took me about 3 to 4 hours until I found credentials because I'm just going and looking for everything in the book. Like, what are some different API keys that I could look for? How could it be named? Could it be API key, API underscore key? And then the last thing I tried was this authorization bearer, and I'm like, holy crap, makes the most sense. It's the easiest one to look for because you just know what it's going to do and it has the entire HTTP request within it as well. This one makes more sense for Vegas. At DEF CON when I did this talk, because if you go to DEF CON and you're gambling, casino always wins. In this case, that was my only time that I've been able to beat the casino. This was a huge European, how do I say this? A European online gambling site, we'll call it. They're massive in Europe. Same thing, again, I love scanning IPv4 space. I haven't done it in a while, but when I was doing a lot of automation recon, go-to sources, having your own data. You scan every day. In the morning, run a scan at 6 a.m. By 9 a.m., when you're getting your coffee, you have all this beautiful data. Well, it turns out this casino site has this lottery application that's attached to a lottery API, and you just have a login page. You go to it, it's a boring login page, no information at all. You have your forgot password and your login. If you do forgot password, it hits this API and sends information to it. Same thing with login, and that's about it. Well, if you do a little bit of content discovery again, you use your FF, ForExpress, or whatever you want to use. And if you go under V1 and you brute force for these endpoints, there are a couple of things that come up. You can see that there's users that comes back at 401, which naturally I don't have a session. It's not going to let me access it. You have verify, you have users with an ID, and you have me. And then there's also this like auth new. Auth new is very verbose. We love a good verbose API that tells you exactly what it needs. So when you send a post request, it says, hey, you are missing email, password, and verify password, like your password too. And all you have to do was send us the data at once. So you send it a request and you say, hey, I want you to create a user that's email and this password, and it gives you an access to it. And when you go in there, when your session is created, it actually gives you access to users me, which is your profile, and then users verify, which now is a 405, but that's how you are able to verify your account. Keep in mind that this is supposed to be internal, right? I can't just sign up with a Gmail account. Whatever account you sign up with, the email isn't going to go out there, right? But when you hit users me, it gives you the verification code. So I don't have to get the email. The verification code is hard-coded into my profile, and all I have to do is send it to verify me, give this to them, and then we can log in. But we're not fully activated yet, right? We give it the verification that we're completely logged in, but there is still limited access. Let me just go through these real quick. There we go. Get to where there we go. So we log in, we have our account, but this is read-only. I can see a list of users. I've no access to write anything, edit anything like that, but I do have access to read accounts, right? Well, it turns out the corporate emails that they create, it's always a first name and last name. Let me just make sure I'm on the right slide. There we go. And you have a list of them. You only just can't log in, right? And when it all fails with your users, when you have a list of users, a lot of the times that I've seen is there's going to be someone that uses a password 123. That always seems to be working. So what I have to do here is go to a list of users. I dump a list of all the emails, log into that account, and now we suddenly have admin privileges again. So a lot of times, a lot of things that I tell people is when there is a login page, when there is an authentication in front, and you have an internal application, there's always a way to create accounts. A lot of times what we see with the big companies like this, they have contractors. The contractors have to get onboarded somewhere, somehow. You have to find that internal endpoint that allows you to register. Now let's talk about the fun part of this. We have access to all of this data. I talk about it. We go to V1 users. We collect a list of users, create a good password brute force. We launch a password brute force where we get a password 1, we log in, and we have now suddenly access to provision new accounts and submit this to the bug bounty program, and you can just upload files and shell it and get another bounty from the casino. The casinos are really interesting because you never know who is going to be on the other side. They're very hard to work with because the security physically is a big thing for casinos, and if someone that spent a lot of time at a casino in Vegas, you're always scared to interact with them on a security side of things because you don't know what they're going to say. So if you're owning a lottery site, especially with in this case, you have access to everyone that's won, what the lottery numbers are going to be and things like that. This is another example of just not knowing if things that you're doing is legal or illegal with bug bounties. But yeah, it just thanks to bug bounties, you're able to hack all these different industries. As a conclusion, before I wrap up, and I know you guys have questions, bug bounties, again, it's really a good place for you to be able to create your own research. If you want to test a theory, bug bounties are a great place to start. There are large companies like Apple, there's Amazon, there's all these large companies that have a lot of different infrastructure you can go to and do your research. If you're trying to get into web app hacking, you're trying to get into pen testing, whatever the cases that you want to do web apps, bug bounties honestly are a great place to do it. And it's no longer just about web, as you have your mobile apps, your hardware, aviation, cars are all becoming a part of bug bounty program. So if you are trying to break it through, but you want to do it as a side hustle, you're not fully sure what you want to do next, I, as an example, could tell you that bug bounties have been the place that I've done most of my research, and it's also helped me build an awesome career. And last but not least, if you want to get in touch with me, I go by NahamSec online. You're also welcome to email me. And then if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, got a couple questions coming in, and I see some more people typing. So this one's kind of a long one, so I'll ask it slowly. What are good ways, and we get this question a lot, I'm sure you do as well. What are good ways to get real practice at this to where you're actually capable of discovering new bugs? All the free stuff, the CTFs, the VMs, the intentionally hackable websites, never feel like real world. I try the same things from those resources against the real world and nothing.
I think the best thing is just pushing yourself into the space. I think a lot of these VMs and the hackable sites are very good place to learn things in theory. So if you learn SSRF, it gives you the tools that you need. You understand how SSRF works, you understand how to look for them. You have to just translate those over to a target. So what I recommend to a lot of people is going in, looking at a VDP, a Vulnerability Disclosure Program. These are companies that don't pay you. It's just, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, that people are working for free, but honestly, it's a really good place to get started because a lot of these top hackers aren't going after these bug bounty programs or these VDPs because there's no money involved. So what I recommend is going to these VDPs, learning how to look for these bugs that you have learned through the resources, whatever it is, a hack the box or the VMs or whatever it is, and see if you can build your own methodology to look for these vulnerabilities. Start with something simple as XSS, IDOR, CSRF, really learn how to look for those bugs, and then keep on adding more and more vulnerabilities to your tool belt.
Cool. Another question was with the hacks recently with MGM and Caesars, and some of them paid a bounty, some of them didn't. This person's saying that they heard a comment from a well-known hacker that said, MGM is literally like a real world West Side Story going on because it's so owned that the adversaries are fighting each other on the casino's turf. Is there truth to that?
I can't comment on MGM specifically. That's a really hard question. I'm going to pass on that question because I don't know how to answer that.
Yes.
I would say yes. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these casinos, just with any other industry, casinos are also becoming more open to working with hackers. And hopefully this case with MGM becomes a good example of come and work with hackers. I know that bug bounty isn't going to be the thing that's going to fix everything. It's not going to be the thing that's going to prevent from adversaries getting in, but it's going to help you find some of these easy vulns that you can get into. So I think there is a way to work with hackers. It's just a lot of these companies are hard to work with, and casinos are the prime example. They take the physical security so seriously. Everything at all times is on watch. When you go to DEF CON, they have protocols deployed for DEF CON, but yet you can't do the same thing for your online presence.
Yeah, I remember one time we were running an exam, a GAC exam, GSE, the security expert, and I was involved in setting up the access points. They told me to hide them around, they meant the floor where we're doing classes and stuff, but I hid one out on the casino floor in the middle of a bunch of slot machines because they're in a circle. Security was not happy about that. That's the day I learned that they're wireless, that the slot machines are wireless, which is
insane.
So another question is, isn't it dangerous scanning a random IPv4 space without getting permission from the company that owns it first?
Yes, the first time I actually did the IPv4 scan, we had a disclaimer in the HTTP request that said like this is for research for DEF CON. Please contact us here, and we had a lot of pissed off CISOs, unfortunately. But I think if you put a disclaimer on where to go to get information, a lot of times they're okay with it. You're gonna get some of those emails of like, hey, please don't scan us, remove those IP addresses. There are some ranges that I would not scan. There's a couple of repositories online that you can go through to tell you, like, hey, don't scan these IP addresses. Definitely take that advice. It's not technically illegal because I'm not making any malicious requests. I'm just indexing whatever is on the web root. And a lot of times I don't even hit the web root. I'm just grabbing the SSL cert and I'm leaving it as it is. So is it illegal? No, but also it's not fully illegal, right? But you just gotta have a disclaimer where to get information, because a lot of times people just want to know, why does this random IP come to this host that was supposed to be internal, for example?
Yeah, I love this next question. It hits hard. How often do you not find anything worthwhile doing bounties?
More often than you expect. Bug bounties are, right now for the last like 3-4 months, I've been on this like insane path of like finding vulnerabilities. I've slowed down a lot in November just with the end of the year coming up, just taking some time off. But when you go back to it, it's a grind. It's you putting in days, weeks at a time when you're not finding anything. But honestly, I'm a big, I always like creating momentum with everything you do in life. Bug bounties, especially, you build momentum. You find your first bug, it gives you a little bit of energy to keep grinding out more hours. But it happens a lot. It depends on the company size, the maturity of the company, how much legacy stuff they have. But it takes a very long time sometimes.
Yeah, it's the same thing with binary exploitation too. Like you can spend weeks diffing and nothing at the end. You have to look at it like, but I learned stuff along the way, right? So what are some of the recon tools that you personally use and would recommend?
I would say tune into the next talk. I think Hadex is going to cover that, but I use the regular tools. I use FF, Sublister, Subfinder, Maskscan, a lot of the open source tools that are out there, but also some things that I've put wrappers around, like the IPv4 stuff that I scan for. It's not an open source tool, but you can use things like that. I know there's Trickest now that allows you to build your own workflows to do whatever you want, but it just depends on what your goal is. But anything that I use, most of them are just things that I've built on top of open source tools that are available to everybody.
Cool. We'll do one last question. It is the process of scanning the entire IPv4 space to do reverse lookups and find more domains, or are you scanning for open ports and services?
Both. So you scan the entire IPv4 space to one. If you did it daily, you see the changes. So let's say I'm targeting Apple. I scan all of IPv4. I can see what's brand new on the changes that I've made. Every day, maybe not that, it's not going to be a big change, but if you do 3 days and 3 days apart, there's times where the cert changes, a new IP address comes up with a new cert. That's the reason why you do it. As far as port scanning goes, I don't scan everything. When I'm grabbing SSL certs, what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing the 10 most common ports, your 443, 8443, 8000, 7000, 10,000, all these different ones. But the whole purpose is just to have a catalog of data that you can diff day to day. So what's different when I type in apple.com? What's different from today, yesterday, and the day before? What's brand new? What is the IP address for it? Is there an application on there? The purpose is to be the first to find these applications.
And you just said a great point, which I know some other folks that are really good at web bug bounties, and they said monitoring pages and looking for just diffing and looking for a change, being the first one to hit that new attack surface. Absolutely.
For a lot of the smaller applications, when you can't hack the entire IPv4 space, for example, it's not the entire infrastructure. You're just stuck to a web app, right? For example, Airbnb is a prime example of it. When I was really active with Airbnb, we had a list of JavaScript files that we're just pulling on a daily basis. It's a cron job. Every morning you will grab it, it would diff it with the last one, and it would highlight everything that was new. And that's another approach. It doesn't always have to be assets that you look for. It could also be monitoring for changes in the JavaScript file. Maybe they include a new parameter this time that does something different. Maybe they include a new endpoint, a new API call. Those are always things you can monitor for. And there's so many tools now that you can use that you don't even have to write your own stuff. You just got to find these right tools and just use them to your advantage.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your talk. Another round of applause for Ben.